Cooper on the Case. A Masonic Authors Guild International production.
Rosslyn Chapel and its apprentice pillar. I was cold, very cold. Getting to Grand Lodge in Edinburgh was not a difficult or long journey, but when the wind blew from the east, it was a cold, very cold wind. That kind of a strong wind all the way, unrestricted from Serbia, is so cold that it will cut you like a knife, as Edinburghers are wont to say. And so it was early on a dark and gloomy Tuesday in January, when I was sat in the library in Freemasons' Hall, cuddling the old cast-iron radiator, hoping, well, actually praying, that Grand Tyler had remembered to switch on the heating before doing anything else, like having a shower or eating breakfast. Grand Tyler lived in Freemasons' Hall, and putting on the heating was one, if not the, major responsibility of his position, well, at least as far as I was concerned. When the phone rang so early in the morning, I was surprised that when I answered it, it was not from a colleague in the building, but from a journalist, Jenny, at the Scots Review newspaper. She had been in touch several times, and I was beginning to regret having given her my business card, but she had been so helpful, refreshing, and intelligent at that Christmas party a few years ago. Before I could even say hello, Jenny said, "Happy New Year," and "How are you?" And as soon as I said, "Same to you," she got straight to the point, something I'd come to appreciate, given the usual long-winded Masonic way of doing and saying things. She asked, "Do you know anything about a Masonic event taking place in Rosslyn Chapel next month?" I did not, but I did not say so, just in case something was going to happen that I did not know about. So I said, "I haven't heard anything." "Well," Jenny said smugly, "I have the inside track from a contact. The Apprentice pillar is going to be rededicated." No doubt with corn, wile and oil, I thought to myself. As far as I knew, nothing special, nothing Masonic, was due to take place in the chapel at any time in the future, let alone next month. But I was intrigued, especially as Jenny seemed to have got information from the horse's mouth. She went on, "My editor wants me to write a major piece on this, so I've got to get the facts right." I thought, this from a journalist? Really? Chuckling to myself. "Jenny," I said, "someone is telling you pork pies. There are no big Masonic events next month, official or otherwise, but I'll check. Meantime, I think you need to get back to your sources and double-check the details." Her answer was typical Jenny. "So you think I'm wrong?" she said. "No," I said, "just verify the facts with your informant. Meantime, I'll check with my contacts what, if anything, is going on at Rosslyn Chapel, but I have to say that I doubt there is any real meat for an article here." "Well, meantime," she said sarcastically, "you can check on something for me. Get me the chapter and verse about the Apprentice pillar's connections to Freemasonry, and I'll call you back." She didn't say when, and hung up. I sighed and turned to my radiator. It was getting hotter. I checked the office diary. No important events were recorded for the next few weeks. In fact, the Grand Master Mason would be overseas for the next 5 weeks. Jenny's information was wrong, or so I thought. Jenny got back to me a few hours later, and what she told me made me sit bolt upright. She said that the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry in Great Britain was to hold a meeting within Rosslyn Chapel to, quote, "commemorate the Masonic apprentice killed in Rosslyn Chapel," end quote. I asked her to repeat that so I could write it down word for word. But I was even more shocked when she continued, "After the commemorative ceremony of the Apprentice pillar, the murdered apprentice degree will be performed with everyone present being included. Those attended will be hailed as members of the ancient Freemasonry in Great Britain and will be presented with a diploma as proof of their membership. Because I am a special guest, I don't have to make a donation." I was flabbergasted. Who did you speak to at the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry in Great Britain? Do you have an address, a phone number? Did you get the name of the Grand Master? I realised that I sounded as if I was begging. I needed to report this information higher up the chain. Now, said Jenny. You know better than to ask a journalist such a question. We journalists can't reveal our sources, she said, with more than a hint of condescension. Well, I tried. That was the story that Jenny was aiming to publish in the Scotch Review, but the who and the why were not my immediate concern. That had to be left in the hands of Masonic politicians. As a Masonic historian, what intrigued me about all this was the thought that some Freemasons, regular, irregular, clandestine, or whatever, had the idea that the legend of a murdered apprentice, as related by the guides at Rosslyn Chapel, was true, and that a Masonic degree was to be conferred by Freemasons, regular, irregular, or clandestine, or whatever. You get the idea. Who and what were the ancient Freemasons of Great Britain? Brother Google had no answers. I needed to get the facts correct in my head before passing them on to my journalist friend, Jenny. Most, if not all, of the so-called secret societies in Scotland, such as the Free Gardeners, Free Fishermen, Free Rights, Hammermen, etc., all had some basis in fact, usually taken from the experience of their daily working lives: stonemasons, fishermen, wrights, that is, carpenters, and metalworkers. How then could a legend, a myth, albeit a Scottish one, be considered the truthful basis for a degree by Freemasons, of whatever stripe? Being very familiar with Masonic ritual, I did not need to get out any ritual books, but let us remind ourselves of the main elements of that part of Masonic lore which centres on the mythical individual known as Hiram Abiff. He is a key figure, one of three, in Masonic ritual who is responsible for the building of King Solomon's Temple. He is, in fact, the architect. The Masonic version of Hiram Abiff in relation to King Solomon's Temple does not exist in the Bible. But the story goes like this. As the temple is nearing completion, some stonemasons, fellows of craft, are upset that the temple will be finished before they can become master masons. If so, that would mean that they would never obtain the secrets of a master mason as possessed by those of Hiram Abiff's rank. In some constitutions, these ruffians have names. The three conspire to get the secrets of a master mason, even to the point of using violence. King Solomon's Temple has 3 exits, and when Hiram Abiff is saying his prayers at high noon, that is midday, a fellow of craft is stationed at each of the exits. When Hiram Abiff tries to leave, he is assaulted. The first 2 attacks fail to get Hiram Abiff to reveal the secrets, but he is wounded each time. The third ruffian also fails to extract the secrets, but in trying to get them, he kills Hiram Abiff. These are the basics of the story that will be familiar to nearly every Freemason. How does this compare with the murdered apprentice degree to be conferred by members of the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry of Great Britain? No doubt conferring it in Rosslyn Chapel, in sight of the Prentice Pillar itself, is designed to add drama and authenticity to the degree, and consequently to the prestige of the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry of Great Britain. I went to the stack of my most used books. The Illustrated Guide to Rosslyn Chapel from 1892 confirmed that William St. Clair of Rosslyn, who was born about 1400 and died around about 1484, supervised the building of Rosslyn Chapel. The foundation stone had been laid in 1446. St. Clair micromanaged every aspect of the building work. He gave the master stonemason in charge of the building work a drawing of a pillar that was to be erected in the southeast corner of the chapel. The pillar was extremely ornate, with numerous complex carvings in a spiral pattern. The master mason doubted he had the skill to create the pillar from a drawing. He was allowed to travel to find and examine the original pillar, which was said to be somewhere in Italy. 600 years ago, travelling that distance from Scotland took a great deal of time, and not to mention the dangers involved, and the master mason took many months, if not years, to find and study the original pillar. When eventually he returned to Rosslyn Chapel, he was stunned to discover that in his absence his apprentice, stonemason, had studied the drawing and made a beautiful carved pillar. In a fit of jealous blood rage, he hit the teenage apprentice on the head, killing him stone dead. Filled with remorse, the master mason committed suicide. From this, it can be seen that the two stories are not the same. In the Masonic myth, only one person dies, that is Hiram Abiff, and he is murdered in cold blood by a conspiracy of 3 fellows of craft. In the Rosslyn myth, 2 people die, an apprentice stonemason and a master stonemason. Hiram Abiff dies because he refuses to give up secrets, 2 fellows of craft, whereas the Rosslyn apprentice is killed because of the jealousy of a master stonemason. There are other significant differences not mentioned by writers on this subject. Firstly, the Rosslyn apprentice was killed sometime during the 15th century. There is no trace in the family records of any death, accidental or otherwise, in the chapel. The Masonic Hiram Abiff was invented in the early 18th century, that is, 300 years later. I remembered that the oldest Masonic rituals are Scottish and are held in the National Archive here in Edinburgh. Now, where did I put my copy? I had made it a few years ago. I had put it in a safe place, of course, but which safe place? I will not bore you with the details of my search, but I found it, and it is dated 1696. Just as I remembered, there is no mention of Hiram Abiff. The first record of the 3rd degree, and therefore of Hiram Abiff, is in the minutes of Lodge Dumbarton Kilwinning, number 18, that is, in Scotland, on the 29th of March, 1726. Secondly, Freemasonry did not exist when Rosslyn Chapel was being built. The earliest lodge records begin in 1599 and appear throughout the next 100 years. But these are not records of Masonic lodges, but of lodges of stonemasons. Next, the legend of the murdered apprentice is not exclusive to Rosslyn Chapel. It is also part of the lore of other churches in Scotland, the most important example being the nearby Seaton Collegiate Chapel. Having compared the two legends, it is clear that the two are very different. The Hiram Abiff legend is exclusive to Freemasonry, which did not exist at the time Rosslyn Chapel was under construction. Hiram Abiff was the architect of King Solomon's Temple and was not a stonemason. I called the journalist Jenny to explain that the legend of the murdered apprentice at Rosslyn Chapel was indeed nothing to do with Freemasonry, and so the murdered apprentice degree to be performed by the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry of Great Britain was pure fiction. Her answer was, well, it doesn't matter. I've been invited by the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge to take part, and so in a couple of weeks I shall be a Freemason just like you. Wait, I said. Publish what you're being told and your reputation as an investigative journalist will be gone. You'll be a laughingstock, someone who could not get simple, basic facts right, facts that anyone could check. Silence. Hello, are you still there? A sob. Yes, I'm still here. I understood what she was thinking. An exciting story, an exclusive, a promotion, a pay rise. All her dreams had just been shattered. Then I said, but Jenny, all is not lost. Turn the story around. Something like this, maybe. Headline, Top Investigative Journalist Exposes Major Con at Rosslyn Chapel. Jenny Carr reports today that a gang of expert fraudsters have been exposed. Posing as legitimate Freemasons, the gang planned to entice rich and powerful celebrities to become members of an exclusive Masonic organisation with promises of occult and arcane rites known only to a tiny and select group. Relying on knowledge provided by the Grand Lodge of Scotland, our reporter was able to see through the sophisticated and complex web of lies used to entice the rich and famous to a one-off event to be held in the chapel made famous by Dan Brown's hugely popular work of fiction, The Da Vinci Code. There is no evidence that Mr. Brown was in any way involved. When the Scotch Review contacted Rosslyn Chapel, a spokesperson said there was an event scheduled for the date mentioned, but considering the information now provided, we have cancelled that booking. Rosslyn Chapel will always do everything in its power to provide accurate historical information about this incredibly important piece of Scottish history. When the Scotch Review tried to contact the Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry of Great Britain, the phone number had been disconnected. But they were still out there somewhere, I thought. And who was the mastermind? Who was the Grand Master? Wow, thank you, said Jenny breathlessly. I owe you one. Well, probably 10. Got to go, things to write, people to call, bye, and off she hurried. With a loud thump, the book about Rosslyn Chapel fell out of my hand and hit the floor. Roused from my daydream, I mused about how fact and fiction could be blended to make a plausible story. Ah well, back to work. Where's my pen? Dear listener, I hope you found this piece, mainly of fiction, entertaining as well as educational. The Grand Lodge of Ancient Freemasonry in Great Britain does not exist. The journalist Jenny Carr is a fictional character. The comments about the two different legends, the one Masonic and the other from Rosslyn Chapel, are factually accurate, even if they are reduced to brief explanations. And when I say accurate, I mean they have been repeated here as they are usually given. But both are legends, myths. That is, they are inherently not true, not factually correct. For those who wish to know and understand the nitty-gritty of the two legends and how they compare, as well as much else besides, you might like to know where factual information can be found. A list of the sources will be provided in the social media post advertising the launch of this podcast.
Cooper on the case.